really final version is long karata.
8:24 daytime.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Pray for me. My God, now you're adding pressure. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome all of you to our Sunday Feast program. And today's talk will be given by Hare Krishna Jivani Devi Dasi, the power of speech relationship words matter. And I'm very happy to introduce Rahul and Preeti's mother to you. Actually, you know, all of you know her. She's a wonderful mother, wonderful Sunday school teacher, wonderful devotee, wonderful disciple. A lot of respect for her. And this is in addition to her gigantic professional responsibilities, which I'm not going to mention. So thank you, Krishna Jivani, for being here, for helping us, for teaching us. And let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you, Premlas Prabhu, for the kind introduction. Thank you to all the devotees for being here. So as is always, we start with Jai Radha Madhava, and thank you very much for Radhika Kishori Mataji for the wonderful kirtan, really set the mood. So we'll start with Jai Radha Madhava. Srila Prabhupada wanted us, before we start a lecture or before we start receiving knowledge, he wanted two things to happen. One is to glorify Radha Krishna and also say Mangalacharan prayers, which are prayers of gratitude. Anything we know, none of it what we know is what we learned on our own. We stand and have learned so much from many, many teachers before us. So before we start into that, we want to prepare our mood to receive the knowledge. So we'll start with Jai Radha Madhava and then Mangalacharan prayers, and then we'll get into the topic. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी Thank you. Then we'll start with Mangalasharan prayers. First, we offer respect to our Guru. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Vakha Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatamitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarane Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all. This is going to be interactive. So this is our overview of how we are going to spend the next 15 minutes. First, we'll talk about and reflect upon the importance of words. Much of the content you may already have known, but the purpose of coming together for an hour is to just pause from our busy lives, reflect, and remember the knowledge that each one of us already have. So we'll introduce the concept of Vacho Vegam as is described in our scriptures, and then touch upon what does Krishna advise us in how we should conduct ourselves in terms of speech. We'll look at, in the literature that we already know from the Srimad Bhagavatam, what are some examples of people who had controlled speech. And then at the end of it, what is our conclusion? At the end of 15 minutes, what are a couple of things that each one of us can walk away with and remember every day in our life? So these were the references I used. I read Nectar of Instruction, Upadeshamrita. As I was reading all those verses, I also realized that the lives of contemporary saints, people that we know, who live and breathe amongst us, His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj, his book Watering the Seed, where he describes many devotees who shed their blood, sweat, energy, and time to Srila Prabhupada in the youthful years of their life, how they were all living and breathing examples of the nectar of instruction. Whatever is said in the Shastra, their life is an example and it reflects. I also had the opportunity to listen to His Grace Hare Krishna Prabhu. He has done a 60-part series on YouTube on the 11 verses of Upadeshamrita. So how many verses does the Gita have? How many verses does the Bhagavatam have? Okay. So compared to that, how many verses does Upadeshamrita have? Right? So we should never think it's only 11, because those 11 verses are the foundation of how we conduct ourselves on a minute-to-minute basis, both within and outside the temple. So Hariprasad Prabhu had taken the trouble to read commentaries from Radha Raman Goswami, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, along with all of us have read Srila Prabhupada's book and gave this commentary. So I was very inspired by that. And today I'm just going to share just a drop of what I learned from that. So we're going to do a reflective exercise now. So I'm going to ask questions at the end of it. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. I want you to reflect on times in your life where you heard uplifting words or you said uplifting words to somebody. Somebody, either you were vulnerable at a point in life and someone gave you uplifting words, or you gave uplifting words to someone. So I want you to reflect first on that. I'll give you 30 seconds and then we'll go to the next part. Okay, everyone had a chance to think? Now I want you to reflect on hurtful words that either you told somebody or you received from someone that you felt wasn't justified, but you got hurtful words. So people have had a chance to think about both. Okay. So now I want a volunteer, a brave volunteer or two, to tell me how your relationship is with the person, the first kind of words, the uplifting words. Is that relationship still present? When did you hear those uplifting words? Was it last week, last month, 10 years ago? I want one brave volunteer to speak up. And if you don't, we'll go Sunday school style and call upon people. Yes, Prabhu.
This is my spiritual master. So one day he came to home, I was talking, I was opening my heart, and I was telling what happens in the country. Leaders, followers, what happens. Why can't we come to spiritual world with such a desire that this is not my ultimate goal, this is how I am here. After some time, we fell away living the principles, going here and there, and then people get the name plate, power influence, people become leaders, and then things, and then that time some seniors were saying that you cannot manage the temple, we can't close it. So that was the community like years back. It was very difficult for me to accept. And I brought this to him. He said, Naveen Prabhu, if I will be thinking like you, I'll not receive anything. And you get paid for a few minutes. And when I was at the mission, I was very, he has ideas, Prabhupada associates, GBCs, gurus, and then because not everybody gets an opportunity to meet Prabhupada. And I want to follow the person for some time. What they preach, what they do, changes. They say Baba is me. So without any losing respect, change ideas. So now that person followed on the change ideas. So your goal is people around you will change.
You have
services around you will change. Where you bring about the change. The service as you will not change. So that's something deeply impacted my life. So whatever it may be, never give up services. And continue. This topic will come in. Who stands there? Ultimately, my audience is not. So ultimately, if somebody comes, we do together. If no one comes, I will move forward. And that's what he did. And then, but still, ideas has to be changed. Because we need somebody reference.
Yes.
So that was the most profound statement I thought.
Thank you. Thank you. So clearly that happened a while ago, but it still resonates with you and guides you every day. Yeah. May I hear from the Matajis about the second part, like if any hurtful words you got, or perhaps you said it, if you're brave enough to share. Someone wants to share. Mataji, Mayuri Mataji. And how is your relationship with them today? You don't have to share the incident, you just tell me how your relationship is with that person today.
So we also learned that if I heard the hurtful word from a person, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I have learned to forgive someone. So I let that go.
Yes.
And try to connect or like keep the relationship as before.
Wonderful.
So
wonderful. So you had to work very hard to overcome that feeling of resentment. You didn't want to walk around with resentment and bitterness. You wanted to move on. Yeah. So you can see that words can heal or hurt, make or break relationships, and leave a lot of hurt feelings in us. Right?
Can I just so family life has to have a balance.
Yes.
That's what I always get. But family member we cannot have so much problem because we have to stay with them.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
sisters and brothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is hurtful, but just that goes on.
Yes. That's one of those things. We'll talk about it. How to tolerate when we hear. So we know that words are the foundational aspects in relationships. Madhana Mohini Mataji brought up family members. We wherever we are, we speak. We love to speak. We love to hear our own voice, whether it's within a family, whether it's work, whether it's in the devotee community, or whether life in general, activities that you do. You're at a grocery store, you still talk. So words, we have to be very cognizant of the power of our words. We can't change others, but we can be very intentional and deliberate how we are. Thankfully, we are in a glorious sampradaya where we have so many mentors we can learn from. And today I'm going to just talk briefly about Sri Rupa Goswami. That was the second mantra we said in the Mangalacharan prayers. After Om Ajnana, we said Sri Rupa Pranam mantra. He has been a voluminous writer, and everything we do today derives from his instructions to us. He also happens to be the author of Upadeshamrita, Nectar of Instruction. And you see the picture of the 6 Goswamis. One of them is Rupa Goswami. And he had a strong influence and mentored the other Goswamis as well. Okay? So he's also, when we think of Rupa Goswami, we shouldn't think of him as someone who's very stern. He set out all these rules, and if you don't follow these rules, bam, he hits your head. Like, he is not that. He is a loving, kind, instructing father. He's very inclusive. When we sing the Sad Goswami Ashtakam, we say Dira Adira. He was favorable to both the Dira, the sober people, and also not the so sober people. So he's very inclusive. He's very broad-minded. And he was mentoring Jiva Goswami. His nephew was Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami had lost his father at a very young age, and Rupa Goswami was a father figure to him. And Rupa Goswami was writing his magnum opus, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and he tasked Jiva Goswami, after Jiva Goswami completed his grammatical study in Gurukul, really had mastery of Sanskrit, came to Rupa Goswami, and he gave him the job of, your job is to sit and read the entire Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, look for discrepancies, look for grammatical errors, and basically do an editorial review. So that's what he was doing. Jiva Goswami, on the other hand, he was very, he had this awe and reverence relationship, as we all do with our fathers and father figures. And back in the day, when people got together, they really spoke about topics that elevate each other. So there was a gentleman named Sri Vallabh Bhatt. He's not to be confused with Vallabhacharya of the Vallabh Sampradaya. This is a different scholar. He was very well versed in Sanskrit grammar, logic, and philosophy. And he came to Rupa Goswami, and he was discussing a particular verse that Rupa Goswami wrote. Rupa Goswami had written that the desire for bhakti, material enjoyment, and the desire for mukti, liberation, are both barriers for bhakti. And he used the term, they are witches, right? So that was a term that catches your attention, right? So Sri Vallabh Bhatt was giving his comment, and he's a commentator by profession, that's what he does. So he was giving his comment to Sri Rupa Goswami about, why did you compare this mukti as a witch? I can see material enjoyment, you having that sentiment, but mukti cannot be a witch. Why did you compare like that? So, and Rupa Goswami smilingly said, okay, I will definitely consider. Although the scale of scholarship between the two was not even comparable. Rupa Goswami was manifold, a much better scholar. But regardless, he didn't say anything. He just smilingly agreed. But Jiva Goswami could not handle it. He was like, I know what this, my guru is, my father figure is capable of. And how dare this Sri Vallabh Bhatt come and criticize his writing. So he told Rupa Goswami, I just want to go to the river, please excuse me. I went to the river, tracked Sri Vallabh Bhatt, stopped him and said, I don't think you understood the verse properly. And Sri Vallabh Bhatt is like, first, who are you? And then he said, okay, I'm the nephew of Rupa Goswami. And he gave his explanation, Jiva Goswami gave his explanation. And Jiva Goswami said, Rupa Goswami was not calling Bhukti and Mukti as witches. He was simply calling the desire for Bhukti and Mukti as witches. So once he explained, Sri Vallabh Bhatt was very grateful. He was like, oh, thank you for clarifying. I really appreciate it. And then the next time Vallabh Bhatt came the next day, a couple of days later, to Sri Rupa Goswami and said, I really apologize. I didn't understand the verse. But thank God that little young boy clarified it for me. And Rupa Goswami said, which young boy? And he said, that young boy who was with you is extremely bright and smart. And then Rupa Goswami understood what had happened, that Jiva Goswami had gone on his behalf and did all that. So Rupa Goswami was very upset. He asked Jiva Goswami to leave Vrindavan. He said, if we get into this mood of, this is my opinion, that is your opinion, my opinion is better than yours, and this is why my opinion is better than yours, then Vrindavan will become a place where a lot of debates happen, like Varanasi, and I don't want that mood and culture to creep in Vrindavan. Vrindavan is a place of devotion to one and love between each other. So we don't want to one-up someone else in terms of our scholastic aptitude or whatever else other skill we may have. So he said, you do not have the maturity to live in Vrindavan, and I'm going to ask you to leave. And so Jiva Goswami was very heartbroken, because in his mind, he was just defending his uncle. So he went just outside the outskirts of the Vrindavan border, and for a year, he didn't eat anything that was cooked. He really put himself through a lot of austerity. And when news of this reached Rupa Goswami realized that here was a sincere person repenting and showing remorse for what he did. Yes, he did a mistake out of youthful energy, but he is repenting, and we shouldn't hold that grudge against him. So he called him back, and he said, come back to Vrindavan. And Rupa Goswami then taught Jiva Goswami these 11 verses on proper conduct and speech for a sadhaka. So this was written primarily for Jiva Goswami, but Srila Prabhupada says it applies to all of us, every single one of us. And some of the verses are taken from Mahabharata, some of the verses are taken from the other scriptures, some of the verses are very original. But as we say, dynamite comes in small packages. So Upadeshamrita is only 11 verses, but if we have that, that's the foundation. That's the foundation for our Vaishnava Sadacha.
Krishnaji, listed these 11 verses were spoken by Rupa Goswami
To Jiva Goswami. And they are 11 foundational verses on how we as an individual can conduct ourselves. So we are not even going to do the first verse. Once you see the verse, you'll see how profound it is. We are going to take 2 syllables, 2 words from that one verse and talk about it today. May I have a volunteer to read the verse? Mataji. Thank you. Parikshit, may I ask you to read the English translation?
The sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind demands the action of
Anger.
the actions of anger and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world.
So this was Rupa Goswami's first instruction. He said, if you can figure out how to tolerate all these urges, forget Sri Vallabh Bhatt. You will be at a position where you can instruct the whole world. Okay? And so today we are only going to talk about Vacho Vegam. And Rupa Goswami's choice of words, the verses he picked, Vegam means urge. Like those of us who are from South India, we know that Vegam means like speed or quickness or urge. So we all have an urge to speak. How many of you have been in a Zoom meeting and you have this urge to speak that you completely missed whatever the person who's speaking for the last 3 minutes was saying? How many of you have found yourself in that situation? All of us, right? Because we want to get our point in. We have completely lost track of what that other person is saying. Okay? So we have that urge to speak. And that verse also lists a lot of other urges of the uncontrolled mind, urges of anger, urges of the tongue, I want to eat. And udara vega means I want to eat a lot more, gluttony. Okay? And all these urges have one conduit to express themselves. Okay? When you are angry, most of us, when we are angry, I'm sure we don't physically hurt someone. When we are angry, how is it that we express our anger? Nishika, when you're angry to your brother, he did something really bad, how do you express your anger? Okay, that is, and that's not just Mishika, that's all of us, right? That's the first thing we do. Same thing when our mind is uncontrolled and we're very disturbed, the way we show it is through our words. So, like all roads, all urges lead to Vacho Vegam. So, if we can control Vacho Vegam, then all these other urges, even if they are uncontrolled, we've at least arrested the mechanism by which these urges manifest itself. Okay? So this is a big task, right? To say that we should control our speech when we all love to talk and we love to hear our opinion. So where do we start? All what I told you, I don't think anything would have been new. You already knew what are the importance of words. But what is the next step? Is there guidance on this topic? What do you all think? Is there guidance on how we should speak? And who is giving that guidance? Is there guidance in Shastra? Yes. Yes, yes, Prabhu. You stole my thunder. Yes. And there's none, we don't need to rely on anyone, none other than Krishna himself knows how challenging this is. And look at the choice of words. Krishna says austerity of speech because it's so hard to control. It is an austerity, right? And this is from 17.15. So, Rancho, can you please read this verse?
Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyaya bhyasanam shaiva vanmayam tapavuchyate.
Okay, thank you. So, Kalavati Priya Mataji, can you read the translation for me?
Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are fruitful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature.
Okay, so if there's one thing you remember from this class, 4 things. Krishna says, not me, Krishna says that speech should be truthful, pleasing, beneficial to others, and not agitating. Not agitating to others. So let's see what our own Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport. Can I have a volunteer, Prabhu?
One should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. Of course, when a teacher speaks, he can speak the truth for the instructions of his students. But such a teacher should not speak to those who are not his students if he will agitate their minds. This is penance as far as talking is concerned. Besides that, one should not talk nonsense. The process of speaking in spiritual circles is to say something upheld by scriptures. One should not once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying. At the same time, such talk should be very pleasurable to hear. By such discussions, one may derive the highest benefit and elevate human society. There is a limitless talk of Vedic literature, and one should study this. This is called penance of speech.
So Prabhupada is very clear that this is the way we should talk, and ultimately by such discussions, one ourselves will derive the highest benefit, but also elevate people around us. 2 things will happen, right? And if we are in a situation that we cannot fulfill these 4 conditions, we can't be truthful, we can't be beneficial. Sometimes with family, we can't do that. It'll actually agitate them. If we are truthful, then it agitates them. Then Prabhupada says, just sit and read literature. Swadhyaya means self-study. When you read literature, eventually Krishna will give us the intelligence of how to tackle these tricky situations. And both Krishna and Srila Prabhupada elaborates in his purport that ultimately it is a penance. To control our speech is a penance. Speech itself is a penance. So again, truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating. And I'm going to keep coming back to this again and again because we'll be looking at an example as a case study. So these are the 4 characteristics of speech that Krishna recommends that we have. But it's not just what we speak, it is what's the intention behind the words. So Krishna doesn't, and Srila Prabhupada doesn't want us to just suppress our urge in the moment. They want us to have authentic intention behind the words we are speaking. When we speak to someone, is our intention to be truthful? Is our intention to speak in a way that's ultimately beneficial to them? Is our intention to be not agitating to others? Otherwise, we can be passive aggressive, right? Sometimes we can be sarcastic and all that. So it's not just what we speak, but what is our intention? And that intention should also match the characteristics of the speech. And one thing that both Radharaman Goswami, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, all 3 of them in their commentaries write is that we should work very hard to avoid deriving pleasure from harsh speech. And sometimes we go through that. When someone hurts us, our ego wants to lash back, right? We want to I'm going to show you, right? But what the acharyas tell us is we need to avoid deriving pleasure from that kind of speech. So that is something that we need to think about. And you might say, Mataji, did you have a question?
What does the phrase mean, driving pressure from harsh?
That we feel good when we put someone down. That when we lash out at someone, that we actually feel good. If our intent was to do what is for their benefit, say I did a mistake and you want to correct me. Okay? If you want to just put me in my place, the way you speak, the tone in which you speak will be different than if you thought, I don't want this Mataji to make this mistake again. There will be definitely an element of kindness in your tone if the intention is for me to benefit. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you might say, Krishna Jivani, this is all great, hunky-dory, everything is fine when things are going well, right? When we are provoked, I don't know about you, but I don't remember anything I read from the Gita. It's all gone, okay? It's that you are in fight and flight mode. When someone has provoked you and you're angry, you're hurt, yeah, your adrenaline is up. All what you've read, all the sadhana you've done, nothing is working at that time. You have this instinct to go at it and let your ego have it, right? So we have to ask ourselves, all this is preparation. In good times when we prepare, if we can practice this in good times, then when we are tested, which is speech under duress, when we are in distress, we will at least have a hope and prayer that we can actually control our speech during distress. If we don't practice in good times, forget about it, right? So it's very important for us to reflect on these instructions, think about instances in our life, and I'm talking about my own life where I have not followed this, okay? Reflect on them, how I could have done things better, and think ahead, like when we are in situations where we are triggered, how is it that I'm going to react? And have a toolbox with how we are going to do. And when I was putting together this presentation and I was reading and thinking, then it hit me that this is why Krishna is saying austerity of speech. He could have said in the 17th and 18th chapters, there are so many verses Krishna says, this is charity in the mode of goodness, charity in the mode of passion, charity in the mode of ignorance. He could have said speech in the mode of goodness, speech in the mode of passion, speech in the mode of ignorance. Instead, he chose austerity of speech because he knows it is very hard to practice what I just said. It's very, very hard. This will take a lifetime. But this is important because Rupa Goswami has said, unless we learn to control these urges, we cannot progress on the path of bhakti. So we are not asked to practice tolerating vacho vegam for the benefit of others. We are asked to practice for the benefit of our own self. Okay. So this is Krishna's, hence Krishna implores that speech is an austerity and frames it in those terms. So can people think of some examples in the Bhagavatam where somebody was under duress, they could have lashed out, but they didn't? I picked one example, but I want to hear from you all. Ambrish Maharaj, when he was unnecessarily insulted by Durvasa Muni. Lord Shiva, when Daksha criticized him, he just got up and walked away. Parikshit Maharaj, yes. Prabhu, you were saying the same thing. Okay. So the example that really moved me and inspired me to really start reading Srimad Bhagavatam seriously was the example of Draupadi and Ashwatthama. Many of you know the story, but I'm just going to quickly give some context. All of you know about the Mahabharat war, what happened in Kurukshetra, this fratricidal war between Pandavas and Kauravas, families fighting each other. Except the Pandavas, no one else survived on the Pandava camp. And Ashwatthama was really hurting because his dad Drona was killed by the Pandavas, and he was always trying to please Duryodhana. And he wanted to go and declare to Duryodhana, I killed the Pandavas. Okay? So he goes after the war was done, and war is supposed to be conducted under a certain set of moral codes. Not like now where a drone can just hit. There were very clear war codes. You can't hurt women, you can't hurt children, you can't fight after dusk, you can't hurt someone who doesn't have a weapon, you can't hurt someone who shows their back to you, you can't hurt someone who's asking for mercy. So all these codes are there. But when you're angry, as I said before, none of the things you studied will stick in your brain, and none of that stuck in Ashwatthama's brain. So he went into the tent and he killed the Upa Pandavas, the 5 sons of the Pandavas, in their sleep. These were young teenage boys. These were the sons that Draupadi had with each of the Pandavas. And he, after he did this absolutely heinous, atrocious act, he has the audacity to go to Duryodhana and brag about what he did. This is what I did. And Duryodhana was just flabbergasted. He was like, oh my God, why did you do this? Like, this is horrible. And so this is the situation. And finally, Arjun knows that this is what happened. They find Ashwatthama, they bind him with ropes, and they drag him to the camp where Draupadi is staying. You can imagine, you don't have to be a mother to understand the anguish that a mom feels when she's lost 5 sons needlessly. Okay? So, so this is from direct English translation from Veda Base. Just for the sake of time, I only cut, copy, pasted the English translation. So after this is text 41 from the 7th chapter of the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. After reaching his own camp, Arjuna, along with his dear friend and charioteer, Sri Krishna, entrusted the murderer unto his dear wife, who was lamenting for her murdered sons. So who remembers what was the vow that Draupadi took when she was dishonored in the assembly? What was the vow she took when she was, there was an attempted disrobing? She'll never tie her hair until she gets the blood of Dushashan. Okay? So people might construe that as somebody like seeking for revenge, right? So this used to be Draupadi's mood, but now so much has happened. So many people have died and so much has happened. So, so now Sri Sutta Goswami said, can someone read? Mishika, can you read? Sutta Goswami.
Sutta Goswami said, Draupadi then saw Ashwatthama, who was bound with ropes like an animal, and decided for having enacted most inglorious murder. Due to her feeble nature and due to her being naturally good and well behaved, she showed few respects as a Brahmin.
Yeah. So, so she's just had this heinous loss. Everyone is crying in the camp. And the person who murdered her sons is brought in front of her in that situation, like an animal bound with ropes. And everyone knows who Ashwatthama is. He's Drona's son. And you all know the connection between Drona and Arjuna. Drona is Arjuna's guru. And that was one of the crises that Arjuna had at the beginning of the war because he saw his own teacher. So they have this reverential mood towards his guru. So I want you all to tell me what was Krishna's instruction about the 4 aspects of speech. It has to be pleasing, truthful, beneficial, not agitating to others. So let's see exactly what Draupadi said. Sometimes we are provoked at work or other circumstances. We can all agree that whatever we've gone through in life is not as bad as what Draupadi just has gone through. Whatever we've gone through in life is not as bad. So let's see what Draupadi said. Rancho, can you project and read what's on the screen?
She could not tolerate Ashwatthama's being bound by ropes, and being a devotee lady, she said this: release him, for he is a Brahmana, our spiritual master.
Ujjwal, can you read the next text?
It was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons.
Rancho and then Parikshit. Yeah.
He, Dronacharya, is currently still existing, being represented by his son. His wife, Rupa, did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son.
Parikshit.
O most fortunate one, who know the principles of religion, it is not good for you to cause grief for the glorious family members who are always respectful and worshipful.
Ujjwal.
My lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me.
Mishika. Oh, Mishika. Radhika Mataji. The next 2 verses. Yeah.
If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmana order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief upon them all. Sudha Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthir fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principle of religion and were justified by ways full of mercy and equity and without difference.
So, how do you think that these statements fulfill the criteria of being truthful? What among these verses is truthful?
In accordance with the principle of religion.
Okay, what else? I want everyone to speak up. That side is very quiet.
There's one more dimension to that. When you speak of principle of religion,
Mhm.
but her mom, why she's the same person before God, after God. When she's compassionate for Brahmin, but why she was not compassionate for the other disciples? Because standard, yet leadership role, and if you're a king, if they do mistake, they'll become a non.
Yes.
So that reason she was not showing compassion. She took a walk
Mhm.
in the blood is touch her head.
Mhm.
So the same person, it happened how would you?
Yeah.
So now she has control. She wants to show the compassion.
Exactly.
Her compassion to Dushyasana is the sword. Here, her compassion is different. Dharma changes based on situation. That's what.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. And also, what Dushashan did was very heinous and should be punished. It should be punished. Yeah, everyone else will do it.
That's the reason she's not doing it.
Yeah.
She's compassion before now.
Exactly.
It changes dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Srinivas Prabhu. In those verses, what is it that is truthful? Yeah, there is a social convention and order, and that there is respect for the Brahmanas. Even though he did an act that doesn't qualify him in character to be a Brahmana, she is still saying that they should be respected. What else is that? That's truthful. Something about how it will affect someone else. If we kill Ashwatthama, how it will affect someone else. Kripi, right? So back then the custom was they would do the wife would do sati, and the reason she did do sati was because the son was there. And lastly, what she says, that's what moves everybody, because in this pastime, Krishna also says kill Ashwatthama, Bhima also says kill Ashwatthama. Okay, and here is a lady and a queen, and the one who's most affected by this, saying don't kill him, right? And she is saying, I don't want another mother to cry constantly like me. Okay. She is able, in the time of the worst tragedy a mom can go, she can bring herself to put in the shoes of someone else. Okay. This is a shining example of how devotees are. This is an example of how devotees are. So much has happened in the war, all that has happened. Krishna himself is saying, and usually whatever Krishna says, they'll listen. And here she's giving a counter opinion to what Krishna said. And yes, Krishna was testing too. But at the end of the day, we know that it was beneficial because everyone agreed with her opinion. Okay. They overruled Bhima's opinion, overruled even Krishna's opinion, and listened to what Draupadi said. Okay. So we really need to pause and reflect from all these stories in the Bhagavatam, all these hidden gems and lessons they have for us of how we conduct ourselves minute to minute. Okay. As I said before, whatever offense somebody did to us or however else they provoked us cannot be as bad as what Draupadi just went through. And if she can bring herself in this moment to think about, like an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, right? Like he did it, then now you do it, then you do it. And there's no end to this. Somewhere this has to stop. And she did this for her own sanity. Otherwise, this cycle of violence will continue. And at some point, it has to stop. So, any other reflections from this verse, from what you just read?
There was one more reflection. What Krishna gave free will.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, as you said, reading the lines, he said, but that's not what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So kill him, but that's not what he wants. So Beam said kill him, and she said not kill him. So that's sometimes a test comes.
Yeah.
So that's his purpose. Surrender to Krishna, but don't surrender intelligence. Surrender
With intelligence.
So that's where Arjuna was using example to show the world what is that doing at the same time not doing something like
Yeah.
Or is it,
Discernment.
not in discernment, like it's like prashadam. Karma, there's no karma. Action, there is no inaction. It's one of the examples. Doing action, but there is no reaction to that. So how does still follow the principle, but the difference of changing? So now, for Aswatthama, for money is as good as that.
Yeah.
Remove that, is killed his ego.
Yeah.
That is, so he's killing the offense of egoness, but still leaving him there, so that he has an opportunity to correct.
To repent.
So
Yeah.
that is the important.
Yeah. So these are all, and just because I picked Draupadi's example doesn't mean it's just for women. These are lessons for all of us, right? In these heinous circumstances, how she was able to keep her composure. And that is half the battle. Keeping our composure when we are provoked, half the battle. So, so this is, yes, Mataji.
Here it says that Ashwatthama is a Brahmana, but we say that Brahmana is their guna and karma.
Mm-hmm.
He's not behaving like a Brahmana as to what he did.
Yeah, yeah.
And Krishna also told Yudhishthira Maharaj to tell a lie to Dronacharya, and he hesitated on that, and for that he had to see one day in hell. At that time, when he did out of his own desire, he told a lie. So, but here Krishna is telling Draupadi, don't forgive him, because again after this he attacks again.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Should he have been forgiven or not? Because he is a sinful person, he will again commit the same crime because he's not understanding or not learning by his.
One could argue that's Krishna's Leela, right? For the dramatic way in which Parikshit is protected. What I wanted to focus on is how Draupadi reacts, right? There's always complexities in our scriptures, and I am not that well read to explain all that. Yes, Rancho.
Lalita Mataji put something on the YouTube chat.
Okay.
She said, meeting a person who is struggling in the same way as his struggle doesn't ensure my growth nor his. So like, struggling in the same way someone else is struggling. I mean, obviously I'm not struggling with something here. So doing the same struggle and retaining the same bad quality doesn't make you grow or he grow.
Exactly. We always say, right, two rights make a wrong. And ultimately, although today Krodha Vegam is not the topic of this class, one of the things that the Nectar of Instruction says is the only way you can control Krodha Vegam is you have to forgive. You have to forgive. As Mayuri Mataji mentioned earlier, if we don't forgive, we are running around with a lot of resentment and bitterness. So for Draupadi at that time, that was her right way to get closure in this horrible situation. So some of you said, and this is just one example. Well, I just cited one example. This is the example that.
Hare Krishna, please come inside. Please, we have space here. And devotees, we have requested everybody every time. If you can come in the front, then it will help others to also please come. Our own devotees, please come in the front in the future, please. Yes, please come.
Okay. So when I asked for examples, many of you mentioned Ambarish Maharaj, but I also thought like an example of controlled speech is also Dhruva, right? When many of you know the story of Dhruva, when Dhruva saw Narayana and came back to his kingdom, his stepmother was very remorseful. But he actually said, because of your words, I actually went on this quest. He didn't hold a grudge. He didn't lash out at her. Same thing with Prahlad, lot of distress, but was able to control his speech and see only the good in others. So these are just few examples, and there are a lot more. If you go into Chaitanya Charitamrita, we won't have enough time for the class. We'll have so many examples. Haridas Thakur, Nityananda Mahaprabhu, all these are examples for how we should control our urge to speak. And for those who just joined, the way Krishna advises us, the way we control our speech is to ensure that both the intent behind our words and our words should be truthful, pleasing to others, for their ultimate benefit, and most importantly, not agitating to others. And if we can't do all these four, we better spend more of our time reading the Vedic literature. So we will equip the skills, the tools, the maturity, and the intelligence to conduct our speech in such a way. So I deliberately structured this presentation to be shorter, so we'll have more time for discussion and Q&A. So these were the two conclusions I had. The first conclusion is we control Vacho Vegam, the urge to speak, not so much for others, but for our own progress in devotion. All these urges that Sri Rupa Goswami told Jiva Goswami are huge stumbling blocks for our progress in bhakti. And so we have to do it at least for our own self. Even if we don't do it for others, ideally we should do it for others, but even if we can't do it for others, we should do it at least out of a huge self-interest for ourselves to progress in devotion and to develop the qualities of purity, humility, sincerity, and authenticity. So, and the next conclusion is, if we are really wounded and we cannot simply bring ourselves to do it for ourselves, we have to do it for Srila Prabhupada. And the reason we have to do it for Srila Prabhupada is so we don't hurt his mission. His mission is our mission. And every single one of us are ambassadors of Srila Prabhupada and Bhagavad Gita and Krishna consciousness. So if we are not able to tolerate Vacho Vegam and we have a slip at work, at most it will affect our reputation, it will affect our career, it will affect our reputation as a professional. But that damage will affect us and our family. Okay. But if we fail to do all that as a devotee, that impact doesn't stop with us. It impacts other people. People who come to the center of worship to learn about Krishna, to learn about the Gita and the Bhagavatam, they will see that there is a hypocrisy between what we say and what we do. So that is my concluding message, that we have to learn how to tolerate these urges, and particularly the urge of speaking. And we cannot temporarily, just as a show of pretense, say, because I can't meet all this criteria, I'm just not going to talk at all. I'm not going to open our mouth. Any husband and wife who pledged, I won't talk to you after a fight, will know how long that vow lasts, right? You'll say that I won't talk to you for a day, and after 20 minutes, you're back again, and usually fighting again, right? So that's not our nature to be quiet for a long time. So our nature is to be active. And it's best that we use this precious power of speech in Krishna's service, in sharing spiritual knowledge. And if we are not in a position to do that, we are not in a position to speak the truth, not in a position to speak something that's for someone's ultimate benefit, it's not pleasing, and it's definitely not going to be not agitating. It will agitate someone. It's best that we don't speak. And pray. And Krishna, when we are sincere, Krishna will arrange things for us to somehow communicate that message to that person. And we will do it in a way that at least from the core of our heart, not just words, but from the core of our heart, we want them to be benefited. We don't want to hurt them. And we want it for them to hear the truth. And with that, I will stop and we can open it up for discussion. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'll take any comments, criticisms, feedback, questions. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
I have a small question. This is regarding the example which you gave of Draupadi and forgiving Ashwatthama. Now, if things are on a personal level, we can do that. But when we see that it may affect other people, and specifically if there is a person on a leadership position, many of us are in our own ways. In that situation, they forgive him and he again attacked. That time again they attacked his own family, but he could have attacked other people. So how justified is that action? And addition to that is, there is a saying, we cannot please everybody. Reason being, sometimes you have to be very firm and straightforward, and people, it may not be very pleasing to them, but it is the need of situation, specifically when you have to get works done, being professionally or
Absolutely. It depends on how much adhikar or what position we have. So I have, and when things aren't,
we will have to be firm and direct to correct them. So when we say that, it may be agitating to them. But again, that's where I go back to intent. If we respect the other person as a human and we are genuinely vested in their own growth, it's like saying, hate the sin, not the sinner. I didn't like what you did, and I know you have the potential to change. I know you're a compassionate person because you've done great things on all these 10 occasions that I've worked with you. This may have been a lapse. So I really want this to change. And how can we work together to change it? Or what do you think you can do it? So this is where open-ended questions come. But to get to that place, we have to have that maturity and not be from a place of emotion. Because when we give that feedback, that we have no control over how that other person is going to take. They may not take it in the same measured tone that you give. They might be like, how dare you say that? And who are you to say that? Like, who knows what their reaction would be? So if we don't have moral clarity on the why we are giving them feedback and on the how we are giving them feedback and what exactly we are going to say, we will be in no position to handle whatever comes out next. So we have to think that through deeply, reflect, and that's where open-ended questions come. Oftentimes we just say something and it's a yes or no. That person is boxed. Have you heard of this concept of saving face? So where people want to save face, like if you say you did something wrong and leave them with a yes or no, that poor soul is left with either admitting the guilt and losing face, which no one wants to do. How many of us here wants to lose face and accept responsibility, right? It takes a lot of maturity to do that. But if we ask them open-ended questions, hey, this happened. I know both of us didn't want this outcome to happen. What do you think you could have done for this to be different, for this outcome to not have happened? That allows some distance for the person from the situation, because now you're not attacking that person. You're just not attacking that person's integrity. You're not attacking that person's character, but you're expressing displeasure at the situation. And you're giving the benefit of the doubt that you trust them, that they are good at heart. They just didn't do this thing right. When you ask an open-ended question, they themselves will reflect and come to the conclusion that whatever they did was wrong. But they came to it on their own, not with us beating a stick on them, right? And in that process, you preserve their dignity. And they may never come and acknowledge or thank you, but they will remember that you allowed them to save face. And that ultimately will result in a transformation of their heart that's more sustained and more deep than us being very harsh and making it black and white. Okay? And the best way to remember this is it's just a matter of time that we will also do some mistake. And how would we want to be treated by our boss? So it comes with time, and it comes with maturity, and it comes with making a lot of bad decisions in life. That's when you get wise and then eventually make good decisions. But we have to be in a place where we reflect on things that we have done. Oftentimes, at least from my personal opinion, our lives are so busy that we are not having time to reflect on what we did. So we don't learn from our mistakes, and we end up committing the same mistake. So if you're in a position of authority and you're responsible and you see something, yes, you absolutely have to give feedback. That is your job as a leader. But there's also a way of how you give feedback. If you give feedback in a way that, I'm just giving this patient care as an example. If that person quits and goes, okay, I don't know if we really achieved what we wanted to achieve, okay? Because they were still a good person. They just had this moment of weakness where it didn't happen. And when you are working with team members in a way where through low points you persevere and you lift the other person and go together, you'll be amazed at how that relationship survives even in the toughest of times. We went through as healthcare professionals during COVID. It was a very tough time. But all those relationships that we had built the 10 years before COVID hit helped us persevere through COVID. So I think that's why I always say that when things are good, that is our moment to practice all this, because we never know when the distressful situation will come. I think I answered the question about the position of authority. Yeah. Any other questions, reflections, comments?
Just a follow-up question on
Prabhu and then Mataji. Yeah.
just a follow-up question on that, Mataji. By the way, great session. Thank you for preparing and presenting. So again, it's a workplace situation when like the situation explained by him on the feedback, right? When you pass on a feedback, you can clearly see on their face if they're accepting the feedback or not, right? If they're getting agitated or not. And then if it happens multiple times, the only option that I am aware of is letting them go.
Yeah.
So how do you make that decision, letting them go, or you just keep giving feedback and
that will change based on circumstance to circumstance and how much chances you've given, how sincere their endeavor is. So at some point we'll have to use our own discernment and our own judgment to help make decisions about hiring and firing and all that. But because you brought it up, I'm just going to bring something up as well in that connection. Each of us, we have roles within and outside the temple, and we want our conduct to be the same within and outside the temple. So we have to reflect upon deeply and ask, what is my identity? Am I an IT professional, doctor, manager, whatever, who happens to be a devotee? Or am I a devotee who happens to be an IT professional? So we have to be clear in our mind, what is our first identity? If our first identity is, I am a devotee of Krishna, I am trying to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions, whether you intend it or not, you will find yourself, your speech and your actions reflecting what the Gita has taught us. But if we compartmentalize our identity and say, this is what I do the rest of the week, and Sunday, the 4 hours or 3 hours I come to the temple, this is what I do, then we will have compartmentalized identities, compartmentalized words and actions. Our society is not called the International Society of Chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It's not called the International Society of Reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's called the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, meaning be conscious of Krishna at every minute in your life. And the reality of the situation is every minute in your life, most of the time, out of the 100 and how many hours do we have in a week? 178 or 68 hours in a week, we are spending very little time in the temple. Okay. we are spending very little time of our time in devotional activities, which means most of our time is spent outside. So we have to get to a place in our mind that we are conscious of Krishna, his instructions in the Gita, the example of the life that Srila Prabhupada led, and how we conduct ourselves as an ambassador. Like when you have the US ambassador to India, right? He is representing the whole United States. Same thing, Indian ambassador in the US. So we are ambassadors of Srila Prabhupada. And how should our conduct be both within and outside the temple? It has to be exemplary character and integrity. So with that, I don't know if that answered your question, but it starts on what your identity is, reflecting on how you're going to speak. If we have to take some courses in leadership and open-ended questions, take all whatever courses you need to do our job successfully in the material realm. But you'll realize that the more you read Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, there is so much more in these books than any self-development or leadership course can give you. It's just that are we humble and receptive enough to learn the lessons from the Bhagavatam? I think we're 2 minutes past time. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Hare Krishna.